Hello, everyone. Welcome to Guruschools' latest offering, the course on Agile, which includes Scrum and Kanban. Before we jump on to course details and what we intend to cover as part of the training, a little brief overview on who we are. We at Guru Schools are an IT consulting firm with a practice center that has its aim of sharing, growing, and enriching education. And we've set up our roots in providing the best in class education with a correct mix of dedication, efforts, direction, approach, and attitude. Uh, we constantly have a commitment to betterment. We have a very student-centric approach, and we constantly evolve to provide the best experience to all our students. Uh, the fundamentals of our all our offerings are our six pillars. The first one being instructor-led live training sessions. So all our training sessions are conducted by industry experienced professionals, and these provide live training sessions on a weekly basis. The second pillar being the certificate of course completion. So, on successful completion, every candidate is provided with a course completion certificate. In addition to these, we also provide resume preparation assistance to all our candidates because we understand what requirements are fit for a successful resume for a career ahead. Besides the resume preparation, we also provide interview preparation assistance for both vendor interviews as well as for client interviews. And these come from our industry experience that our trainers possess. Last but not the least, we also provide project support, which is ongoing and which is of technical assistance to the candidates because once placed, the candidate would require that amount of time to get on board. Moving on to the course that we're offering right now is the one on Agile, which includes Scrum and Kanban methodologies. Before we understand what the course is all about, I'd like to briefly touch point on what is Agile. So Agile essentially is a mindset, and it's a mindset that focuses on the ability to create and respond to change. In today's dynamic times where, businesses are constantly evolving and have to respond to very dynamic and fast-paced changes, Agile essentially is a way of dealing with and ultimately succeeding in an uncertain and turbulent business environment. Agile software development is based on iterative development vis-a-vis the traditional approach, which depended on providing the complete product to end users. Agile focuses on an approach where the requirements and solutions evolve constantly through collaborative approach between self-organizing and cross-functional teams, which includes various stakeholders. Now that we've understood what essentially Agile is, we'll move on to understanding a little bit about what the course entails and what are the various learning objectives. As part of this course, our objective is to understand what are the fundamental concepts, principles, and values of Agile, which in turn will help us develop the adaptive mindset to our work. We will also focus on learning about the most popular Agile frameworks, primarily being Scrum, Kanban, and Scrumban. So now that is clear, we'll move on to the week-wise details of what we plan to detail out in each of the weeks. The first week essentially will talk about understanding Agile, and we intend to, briefly explain you all and introduce the various concepts of what Agile frameworks are all about. We will talk about the Agile Manifesto. We will also discuss the various 12 Agile principles that have been detailed out. and understand why these principles are important in governing the framework and understanding how we go about with our agile work. Uh, we will also discuss the various benefits and challenges of using agile because while we talk about dynamism and the agile mindset, we also need to understand what are the various practical challenges that evolve around using agile as a methodology. So we will talk about the differences vis-a-vis the waterfall and the traditional approaches and the various benefits that it has. Moving on to week two, we will begin with understanding a little bit about Scrum. We will begin with understanding what the values, what the various roles within the Scrum framework. Primarily, who is a Scrum Master, who is a product owner, who are the developers, how do they essentially work in a cross-functional way with each other so as to ensure that the successful iterative product features are released in a timely manner. While we're looking at Scrum and the entire method and the entire approach around Scrum, we must also not forget that this has a lot of practical connotations. So while a lot is based on the theory that we provide, we will also look at practical examples at the end of the session to put the theory in perspective. We will continue with the Scrum ceremonies and events in week three, where we will look at certain ceremonies like the backlog refinement. We will look at what a sample sprint calendar should look like. We will focus on understanding how does one go about calculating the team velocity as a Scrum Master, essentially to understand and gauge teams' efficiency. We will also look at calculation of burn down and burnout charts. So that will kind of give us a better understanding of how does one implement the Scrum framework. In week four, we will look at the various terms and the artifacts that are used as part of the day-to-day operations within the Scrum framework. We will look at what are user stories, how does actually one write user stories, what are the various elements within user stories, how does one go about with drafting the acceptance criteria within user stories, what is a product backlog, what is a sprint backlog, and how are both of them different and related to each other? What is the meaning of definition of ready and definition of done within the entire feature of or a user story? What is the meaning of product increment? So while we look at all these terms and artifacts, as I said, this will just deepen our knowledge, our overall knowledge of how products are developed using the Scrum framework. In week five, we will look at a little more progress of the progression of the Scrum framework, where we will look at what is estimating in Agile. We will look at the various other roles, that have an interplay and that have a dependency of, the entire product development within the Scrum framework. We will begin with looking at essentially why estimation is required, what are the various estimation techniques that the Scrum Master uses within the Scrum framework? Who is a project sponsor? What role do the business leaders play in the Scrum framework? What are technology leaders, and how are all of them different from each other, yet have an interplay of roles within them? Who is a subject matter expert, who are the senior users, who are business users, what is the level of interaction that one has with all of them as part of the Scrum development, and last but not the least, who is an agile coach. What is important to understand is that while a lot of all of these roles, have their varying defining features, it is also important to understand the dependency or the communication that all of them have within the Scrum framework because ultimately it's a collaborative effort. We move on to week 6, where we look at the second agile methodology that's the most popular one after Scrum, and that is Kanban. So Kanban essentially is based on four basic principles. We'll kind of discuss those. We will look at what is a Kanban board, what are Kanban cards, uh, what are the 6 general practices that people follow when implementing Kanban, what are the Kanban key metrics, and what are swim lanes, and what are the steps to implement Kanban. While we're understanding a lot about the terminology and the methodology, we also want to understand in terms of the practical aspects that revolve around implementing Kanban in software development. Uh, Before we kind of conclude the course, we also want to talk about a little bit about the Scrumban methodology, which essentially is a mixture of both the most popular practices. What essentially is Scrumban? We'll kind of do a brief overview of it. We'll also understand the Scrumban debate around sprint. We'll understand what's continuous flow, what's time box, what's a feature freeze, and who essentially are the target audiences when people look at implementing Scrumban in general. Last but not the least, in the last week, we'll focus on understanding the practical nuances around whatever we've learned in theory by using Jira. The Jira tool essentially is the most popular one used within the Agile framework. We'll understand how we can get started on with Jira. How do we manage and track our daily work within Jira? What are the various best practices that one uses in the tool? And all of this, while we're concluding, will give us more practical insights in the entire product come software development cycle. While we've kind of discussed about the course, a little bit about how one can contact for any kind of queries or information that one requires for anything at Guru Schools. We've mentioned our email addresses as well as the website. We also are very active on our social media platforms where we constantly publish our latest offerings and the latest course details and updates. So feel free to kind of check those and like and subscribe to those as well. Last but not the least, thank you very much for your time and have a great day ahead.